For nearly 400 years, the island we now call Britain was part of the Roman Empire. For 4 centuries, longer than the United States has existed as a nation, people in Britain lived as Romans, speaking Latin, worshipping Roman gods, bathing in Roman baths, living in Roman towns connected by Roman roads, governed by Roman law, and protected by Roman legions. And then, in the space of a single generation, it all came to an end. The legions left, the towns emptied, the villas were abandoned, the roads fell into disrepair, the Latin faded from the air. Within a couple of generations, much of what Rome had built in Britain had collapsed so completely that the people who came after looked at the ruined Roman cities and believed they must have been built by giants, for no ordinary humans could have raised such things. This is the story of the rise and fall of Roman Britain, how Rome conquered the misty island at the edge of the world, what it built there, how its people lived, and how, in the end, it all slipped away. The complete life and death of a Roman province. Using advanced AI trained on the Roman histories of the conquest of Britain, the archaeology of Roman towns, forts, villas, and roads across the island, the inscriptions and artifacts the Romans left behind, and the work of modern historians and archaeologists, we have reconstructed the whole arc of Britain's 4 centuries as a part of Rome. It begins with the most famous conqueror in Roman history. The Romans first came to Britain with Julius Caesar. During his conquest of Gaul, Caesar twice led expeditions across the Channel to Britain in the years 55 and 54 BC. But these were raids and reconnaissance, not conquest. Caesar fought some battles, extracted some promises of tribute, and then withdrew. Britain remained free, a mysterious island at the edge of the known world, home to Celtic tribes, druids, and warriors who fought from chariots. For nearly a century afterward, Rome left Britain alone, though trade and diplomatic contact continued across the Channel. The real conquest came later, in the year 43 AD, when the Emperor Claudius, eager for the military glory that would secure his shaky position, launched a full-scale invasion. A powerful Roman army crossed the Channel, defeated the British tribes in battle, and began the long, hard work of conquering the island. Claudius himself came over briefly to claim the victory, even bringing war elephants to awe the Britons. The conquest of Britain had truly begun. The conquest was neither quick nor easy. It took decades of hard fighting to subdue the tribes of Britain, and the Romans faced fierce resistance. The most famous act of resistance came from a warrior queen named Boudica, the leader of a tribe in the east of Britain. When the Romans brutally mistreated her and her people, seizing their lands, flogging the queen, and assaulting her daughters, Boudica raised a massive revolt. Her army swept across the province, destroying the major Roman towns and slaughtering tens of thousands of Romans and their sympathizers, burning the young Roman settlement that would one day become London to the ground. A layer of burnt ash from her revolt can still be found by archaeologists deep beneath the modern city. For a moment, it seemed Roman Britain might be destroyed in its infancy, but the Roman army regrouped, and in a final, decisive battle, the disciplined legions defeated Boudica's much larger but less organized host. Boudica died soon after, by poison or illness, and the revolt collapsed. The Romans tightened their grip, and over the following years extended their control across most of the island, though they never fully conquered the far north, which is why, decades later, the Emperor Hadrian would build his Great Wall to mark the frontier. Once the fighting was done, Rome set about transforming Britain into a proper Roman province, and the transformation was profound. The Romans built towns, real Roman towns, with all the features of urban civilization the Britons had never known. There were forums and marketplaces, temples, public baths, theatres and amphitheatres, grand public buildings and streets laid out in the orderly Roman grid. London grew into the bustling commercial capital of the province, a thriving port on the river. Other towns rose across the island, some of them growing from military bases, some from existing British settlements, each becoming a centre of Roman life and administration. And the Romans built roads. Thousands of miles of straight, well-engineered paved Roman roads spread across Britain, connecting the towns and forts, allowing armies, officials, traders, and messages to move across the province with a speed and reliability never before possible. So well built were these roads that many of them remained in use for over 1,000 years, and the routes of some major British roads still follow the lines the Roman engineers laid down. The Romans brought their technology, their plumbing, their underfloor heating, their glass windows, their coinage, their writing, their law, and their gods, and over the generations, the upper levels of British society became thoroughly Roman. In the countryside, a new way of elite life took root: the Roman villa. Wealthy Britons and Roman settlers built grand country houses across the more peaceful, prosperous south of the province. These villas were estates at the center of large farms, and the grandest of them were luxurious, with many rooms, beautiful mosaic floors depicting gods, myths, and the seasons, painted walls, bathhouses, and the famous Roman hypocaust system of underfloor heating, which sent hot air from a furnace beneath the floors to warm the rooms above, a remarkable comfort in the chilly British climate. The villa owners lived a thoroughly Romanized life of leisure and refinement, dining on imported wine and fine pottery, dressed in Roman fashions, educated in Latin, their estates worked by laborers and slaves producing grain, wool, and other goods for the markets of the province and the army. Britain became a productive and reasonably prosperous part of the empire, exporting grain, metals, wool, and other goods, and importing the luxuries and manufactured products of the wider Roman world. For most of 3 centuries, despite occasional troubles, the province enjoyed a long period of relative peace and prosperity under Roman rule. But the wider Roman Empire was not eternal, and its troubles eventually reached even this distant island. By the later centuries of Roman rule, the empire as a whole was entering a long period of crisis: civil wars, economic troubles, and mounting pressure on its frontiers from the peoples beyond the borders. Britain felt these pressures keenly. The province was raided with increasing frequency by enemies on all sides: the unconquered tribes from beyond Hadrian's Wall in the north, raiders from Ireland in the west, and, most ominously, Germanic seafarers, the Saxons and others, raiding the eastern and southern coasts from across the North Sea. The Romans built a chain of strong coastal forts to defend against these sea raiders, but the threat only grew. Britain, being distant and on the edge of the empire, was also repeatedly drained of troops, as ambitious generals based in Britain declared themselves emperor and led the British legions off to fight for the throne on the continent, leaving the province dangerously undefended. The long peace was ending, and the machinery of Roman Britain was beginning to break down. The end came in the early 5th century, and it came with surprising speed. The Western Roman Empire was now in deep crisis, its heartlands invaded, its capital itself threatened. The emperor could no longer spare troops or attention for a distant island under attack on every side. Around the year 410 AD, according to tradition, when the Britons appealed to Rome for help against the raiders overwhelming them, the emperor sent a reply telling the cities of Britain to look to their own defense. Rome, in effect, let Britain go. The remaining troops were gone. The flow of Roman coin and administration ceased. The imperial government simply withdrew from the island it had ruled for nearly 400 years. And what followed was not a gentle transition, but a genuine collapse. The Roman way of life in Britain unraveled with astonishing rapidity. Without the army to defend them, the towns became vulnerable and began to empty. Without the imperial economy, trade collapsed, coins stopped circulating, and the production of fine pottery and other goods ceased. The villas were abandoned, their mosaic floors left to be buried under centuries of soil. The skills of the mason, the bath builder, the road engineer faded away. Latin gave way to the older British tongues, and soon to the language of new arrivals. For into the power vacuum left by Rome's departure came the Anglo-Saxons, Germanic peoples from across the North Sea, who raided, then settled, then conquered, until much of the former province became a patchwork of Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and the Roman world of Britain became a memory, then a legend, then a ruin. So complete was the collapse that the people who came after could scarcely comprehend what had been lost. The Anglo-Saxons who settled the land lived in timber halls, not stone towns. They had no use for the great Roman buildings, which they did not know how to maintain or rebuild. The crumbling Roman cities, with their massive stone walls, their ruined baths and temples and theatres, stood empty and decaying across the landscape, and to the new inhabitants they were objects of wonder and unease. the work, as one Anglo-Saxon poet put it, of giants, now fallen and lost. The memory of Roman Britain dissolved into legend, feeding over the centuries into the misty tales of a lost golden age that would eventually become woven into stories like that of King Arthur, a half-remembered dream of a more civilized time that had passed away. The roads remained, too well built to vanish. The ruins remained, too massive to fully disappear. The buried mosaics and coins and walls remained, waiting in the soil for archaeologists to find them many centuries later. But Roman Britain itself, as a living society, was gone. That was the rise and fall of Roman Britain. A misty island at the edge of the world, conquered by the legions of an emperor hungry for glory, transformed over 4 centuries into a true Roman province of towns and roads and villas and baths where people lived and worked and worshipped as Romans for longer than many nations have existed, and then abandoned in a single generation, as the empire that had built it collapsed and withdrew, leaving the whole Roman world of Britain to crumble into ruins and fade into legend. For 400 years, Britain was Rome. And then, almost overnight, it was not. The roads still run beneath the modern motorways. The walls still stand in the old towns. The mosaics still surface in farmers' fields. And beneath the soil of England lies a whole lost province of the Roman Empire, the ghost of the 4 centuries, when this rainy island at the edge of the world was a living part of the greatest empire of the ancient age.